Welcome to the American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants podcast. I am your host, Heidy De La Cruz, and I am on the mission to change the narrative of immigration, one immigrant story at a time.
Hey, it's Heidi, your host, and I am here to give a few announcements. So first, I want to say happy holidays. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for supporting. And I just hope that you and your family have a great holiday season this 2024. And new announcement is that the podcast starting for 2025 will be weekly. So you can find episodes on a weekly basis. We're still going to keep the Tuesday schedule. So now you will find new episodes every Tuesday for 2025. And because I am switching to a weekly schedule, I am actually looking for sponsors. And the reason that I'm looking for sponsors is to be able to add someone else to my team. So I don't know if you know, but I run this podcast by myself. So I look for guests, I schedule them, record it, edit, and then we upload. I said we, but it's really me. Upload and just everything that goes on behind the scenes with the podcast, I do it on my own. And so I am looking to be able to add someone to the team to help me. So this is where the sponsors comes in. So I have advertisement packages available if you're interested in sponsoring, and we can talk in more details. You just need to send me an email at Heidi@HeidiDelacruz.com, and we can talk more details about that. So yes, sponsors for 2025 to be able to expand the podcast and add someone to my team. So if you are interested in advertising your business, or you're interested in just, helping the mission of the podcast to amplify immigrant voices and their stories, then I would be more than happy to speak to you in regards to becoming a sponsor for the podcast next year. Thank you again so much for being here. Thank you so much for your support. I greatly, greatly appreciate it. The podcast is growing, and so that's why I need help, because I still am releasing a lot of stories. People are very, very interested in sharing their immigration story, and I'm so thankful and grateful for that. And I'm so grateful for everything that God is doing. And now this announcement has gone longer than it should. So once again, thank you so much for being here. If you're interested in being a sponsor, let me know, and enjoy the episode.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants podcast. I am your host, Heidy De La Cruz. And today I have a very special guest. I have Sindy Feliz. She is going to be talking to us about her moving from the Dominican Republic to the United States, and then also her book and how that process came about. So welcome, Sindy. How are you today?
Thank you. Hi, how are you? Good to be here today.
So excited to have you here. We've been talking about this for a few months, and I'm just so glad we were able to actually record now. And I'm so excited to have you here. I really think that my favorite immigrants to interview are authors. And the reason why, because one, you guys are in a different country that's not really, your home, your native land. And then second, you're writing a book in a language that's not your first language. And that to me is just so powerful and so inspiring. So I'm really excited that this podcast has given me the opportunity to interview authors as well as, immigrants.
I love that. I'm very excited to be here today. I listen to your podcast a lot. It's one of my favorite ones. And I love everybody that has come into your podcast. I think that they all bring a unique and different story, and at the same time, it's so relatable to me.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I love your podcast so much.
Thank you so much for listening and supporting and for being here. So let's get started with you introducing yourself to the audience, and then let's just get right into how childhood was in the Dominican Republic.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sindy Feliz. I'm an author. I grew up in the Dominican Republic, and I moved here at the age of 14. My childhood in the Dominican Republic was like every other typical Dominican. I grew up surrounded by family that I loved. I grew up near the beach. Yeah, that's pretty much my childhood. I was at the beach every day, going like from my relatives' houses, visiting family,
Yeah.
grew up around the people that shaped me and basically like who I am today and my values.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And so what events do you know led your family to move to the United States at the age of 14?
Long story short, my aunt moved to New York when back to the 80s, the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And she basically brought her whole family, her parents,
Mm.
her siblings, my grandfather, and then my grandfather brought my mom. And so I came through my mom.
Gotcha. So it sounds like a lot like my family. It's like one moved and then all of a sudden like they all followed behind and then now everybody's here. So you said that you lived right close to the beach and then you guys moved to which state?
New Jersey.
New Jersey. Okay. So tell me about that shock because from being to the beach to like a city life, like how was that?
Oh my God, there's so many things that I can tell you, but I think the biggest thing for me was I really thought that things would be easier. Like
Mhm.
I had this whole idea of
Mhm.
Nueva York, like the United
Yes.
States. It was hard, okay?
Yeah.
Not easy. Um, the other thing was seeing so many people from different nationality and
Mhm.
different countries. You know, like in DR, we're all Dominicans and we
Yep.
see some Italians, we see Haitian people. And I come here and I go to high school and there's like Mexican and Colombians. That was a lot in a
It was
good
a
way.
lot. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're not the first to say that actually. There was another guest of mine who was like overwhelmed just with how many people from different countries there were and like, learning and everything. And then as she got older, she actually began to embrace that and kind of like cherish that more than it was in the beginning. Because in the beginning it was just overwhelming, because like you said, like you come from a country, it's like those are the only people that are there. So like in the Dominican Republic, it's Dominicans, and like yeah, like you said, you'll see people here and there, but it's just like mostly Dominicans and in the DR.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what would you say was your first cultural shock when you arrived?
I would say just like seeing so many people, so many different people. Yeah, that's the top one for me.
Top
And of
one.
course the language.
So did you learn English back home or did you learn English here in the
Now
US?
here when I came.
When you came, oh my goodness. You want to talk about that a little bit, like how it was?
It was difficult. I wish that my parents put more effort when we were there growing up. I understand maybe we didn't have the resources, but that would have made the transition a lot easier for me and my sisters if we
Yeah.
over there. Uh, but when I came, I was a junior in high school. No English, no nothing. It was scary. I'm a child in this whole new world. I don't understand anybody, but I think I there was a lot of Dominicans there that helped me, so that
Oh,
saved my life basically.
yeah. I'm so glad that they were there to help because other people don't have that experience. Other people would be like, oh, I got made fun of or bullied and things like that. And I'm really glad that you had other Dominicans to be able to help because that is scary, especially in high school, like not knowing the language, not knowing anybody. And
Yeah.
man, I can I
I
can
felt
only imagine.
like all these people and like the whole ways like thousands of students and I'm coming from a school that's small and I know
Yeah.
everybody and now I'm just thrown out there.
Yeah, that
Very,
is very scary. Yeah. Even I like sometimes would like struggle with like different words in English. And I was just like, okay, I know how to say it in Spanish, but it's like, how do I like even communicate this in English? And that's hard. So just like I can only imagine just like not knowing anything. But so you guys moved here in the United States when you were 14. When was the first time visiting DR after moving? How was that experience?
we visited back a year after, right away. It's funny because now every time that I go to VR, I'm from a very small town where we know everybody, and basically we're like a whole big family.
Yeah.
And every time that I go, and I mean this in a good way, in a positive way, I feel like time stands still, like nothing changes. It's like I never left. I go to my grandma's house, and she still has the same restaurant, the same furniture, the same, like, her house, it's structured the same way. The people are like having the same conversation, and it's like good and bad, because you do want, progress, but that's like a whole another conversation. But I do feel like every time I go back, I go back in time, and that's great for my inner child too, because I feel like I connect with her when I'm there too.
Yeah, I love that. That's so beautiful. Just like being able to go back and it's like, wow, like it's still the same. Like I'm home and have that like you said, like no time has passed when because I've heard stories of my family when they go back and it's like I don't recognize anything. Like nothing is the same. And it's kind of like that grief, right? Of like, man, like my home is different, my home is gone kind of thing. So I love that you have that it's able to, be the same. What is one thing you wish you knew about the US before you guys moved?
That's a good question. I think I would go back to being more realistic about how things are. Like, we need to get jobs. We're starting from scratch.
Yeah.
Even though we had family here, like we were the last one to come. I have cousins that they were born here, grew up here. So we were the last one to come, which made it easier. But other than that, I came with my mom and my two sisters, and we really had to start from scratch. My mom, she was a teacher in the art, and when she came, now she's working at a factory, and like she needs to take care of me and my sisters, and it's very different in the economic side of it.
Yep.
With the jobs and just providing for the household, it's a lot easier. You really just have each other.
Yeah. So you had mentioned earlier in the episode how like you guys went to New Jersey, but when you hear in the DR talks of like New Jersey, New York, like it's so romanticized and it's so like, oh my God, Nueva York, and it's like that's where everybody wants to go. So
I'm here for a better life. And when I came,
for a better life. And like you said, like, but the reality is that is hard. And it's, starting over from scratch. And it's not like this, oh, gran, Nueva York and whatever. It's like, no, like you gotta, like your mom, like she had to work in a factory versus being a teacher, like she was back home. And that is so common for immigrants. I've heard many countless stories of like doctors and lawyers and nurses who had these professions in their home country, and then they come here and they're not able to practice what they study, back home. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Of course, yeah. There's a lot that you have to give up to be here, and I think my mom did it for us.
Yeah. That is so true. That is so true. So let's get into your book. And I was thinking about your book. So the book is called If I Denounce My Accent. And when you were talking about like when you guys first moved here, in your book you had wrote about like all your cousins and your aunts and uncles, like how you guys all live together. And so I was just like, I'm really glad that you put that in there because that really paints the picture of like when immigrants come and they have family here, like that's really what it is. So like I remember growing up, like when we had family members, like, moving, like they would stay and like the house was crammed and stuff like that. But it was only for a period of time until they can get up on their feet. But it's like, no, that's how it is. Like it's like 10 of us in one, apartment or house or whatever, and it's crammed. So let's get into your book. When did you know that you wanted to write this book?
I think I didn't know that I wanted to be a writer, even though like growing up, I read a lot. I wrote a lot. Like I loved poesias. I loved the art in general.
Yeah.
paint, and I think that's my source. That's my outlet, and the way that I let myself out in the world. But when I moved here, so in DR, I was a child. I'm not thinking I'm going to be a writer, right?
Yeah,
Then,
yeah.
then I moved here. I I had maybe the dream in me, but I didn't see it as an option. I didn't think that it was possible for me. I'm not from here. I didn't think that Americans were interested in, other people's stories. And it wasn't until I read books by Juno Diaz, Elizabeth Acevedo, and Julia Alvarez. Those are people that really open a whole new world for me. And I thought, they're doing it, and their stories are being received. Why wouldn't mine be received if it's so similar to their story? And that's when I think it was back in 2021, 2019, 2020 that I said, okay, I'm going to write my story, and I'm just going to focus on writing the first chapter. And then from there, see what happens. And I just automatically, I didn't have an idea for a story. I just knew it's going to be my base. I'm going to take a lot of inspiration from my own personal journey. And that's how it happened.
Oh, well, I'm so glad you wrote it. I'm so glad you pushed through and published, because it's a needed story. It's a very unique, but then also common at the same time too. And I love, supporting especially Dominican authors, right? Dominican writers, because our stories matter, our words matter, and it's really good to see representation out there for like what can be achieved. Like you said, it's not like, you don't really grow up saying like, I'm going to be a writer, especially not in a Dominican household. It's like, what?
Yeah.
You got to go to college and get a job. And, it's like, you don't hear that. So I love that you published the book. And one of the things, I actually finished your book in DR. So I was in the homeland, and I was reading your book, and I was like, man, this just hits differently, because the things that you're describing, it's like, I know it, I see it, like I'm here. So it was very actually emotional for me too. It was like, wow, like I'm reading this and I'm here, and it was nice. So you talked a little bit about the writing process. So you said you just focused on writing the first chapter and seeing how it went. So what actually helped you push through to finish? Because some people can start writing and then they get distracted and just leave it there for years. So what helped you push through to finish the book?
That I was really enjoying the process of writing it. I felt it was fun to do it, and it felt like this needed to happen before, and I'm glad that it's happening now, that I'm finally committing to this. And it also felt like a love letter to myself, because and emotional too, because I talk a lot about things that I don't talk about myself. I struggle with depression my whole life, and it's not something that it's easy to put out there, and I admit. So it felt like I was writing a love letter, that I was finally accepting my reality and healing and moving on.
So it sounds like it was very therapeutic for you to write this.
Yes.
Yes, I love that. Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. So when people buy your book on your website, it comes with a love package. And in that package is a few gifts, and you can go ahead and share what they are. So I just want to know, like, why are you including this love package with your book? Like, what is the significance of that?
I think that I want my book to not just be a book. I want my people to see themselves in my book. And that's why I chose the muñecas sin cara, the faceless dolls. That's a very cultural item for us. And we see that, we see ourselves. I've been to an event that people approach me just because they see the muñecas sin cara. So I wanted something that would help people feel seen because that's something rare for us to,
Yeah.
like, you don't go to Barnes and Novels and you see, well, yes, you do, but it's not something that like you see a lot. It's very rare. So that's the main purpose. I want people to feel seen and see themselves in places where they wouldn't see themselves. And I hope that it's doing that for my community.
It is. It is. So when I opened mine and I got the doll, it really brought me back because my mom had a few in the house and as decorations, and it just brought me back to this. Like, oh man, I remember seeing these dolls in my home, but I didn't know the significance of them, right? Until I looked more into it, and I was like, man, like just holding that doll just like really brought me back. And there's a few restaurants here in Florida. There's one here in Orlando, then there's one in Miami, Dominican restaurant, and like they have them. They have them like really big. So like when you walk in, that was like one of the first things you see, and I'm like, yep, there it is. That's a staple in the DR. That's really big in our culture. So I love that. I love that you're including that in having a little piece of DR for everyone who purchases. That's really cool. So what is one thing that you would want readers to take away from your book?
I think Grace, like give that my character Grace, right? She's a child. She's navigating through life. She doesn't know a lot. It's not from a place of I want to like my book is not meant to teach. It's not meant to, well, yes, it's meant to teach, but it's more of about sharing. Like I was in the dark for so long. I want to be out in the world and share the weight for like my pain and just be seen. Does that kind of?
Yes, definitely. That makes perfect sense. I love that. I love that. And so last question, just wrapping this up. You've had some very beautiful answers. Thank you so much for sharing and being here once again. So last question that I love asking my guests because, and we talked a little bit about this before we started recording, is because it's so unique for each person, right? So what does the American dream mean to you?
That's a really good question. And I think, like you said, the American dream means something different for everybody else. If you were to ask me this question maybe 5 years ago or 4 years ago, my answer would have been completely different. I would have said a house. I would have said, I don't know, that my mom gets a house. But I think now today, my American dream is that I want to break barriers for my community and my people. I want to break generational curses in our community and break the stigmas of mental health. I want my community to be seen, to have a place, and I want to be happy. I felt like I wasn't that for so long, and I want to enjoy life in the now and exist without having to feel like I have to accomplish something to feel like I have value.
Man, I felt that 1,000%. Like, yes to all of that. Being happy, breaking barriers, talking about things that our family or in our culture doesn't normally talk about, breaking glass ceilings and paving the way for other people in our community. I absolutely love that. Thank you so much for sharing. And if people want to purchase your book or get connected with you, how can they do that?
Of course, people can go to my website, sindydf.com, and purchase my book. And you could also find my social links there as well.
Perfect. So I will include your links in the show notes and the show description so people can get connected with you and follow you and purchase that book. I also wrote a blog post about it, so I will include that blog post as an additional resource for people. And thank you, Sindy, so much again for being here, for sharing your story, for writing that awesome book. Just thank you so much. Any last words or anything that you would like to say to the audience?
Well, thank you for listening, I guess. I hope you can take something away from this conversation, and you can always follow me and reach out if you have any questions. And Yeah.